Authorize by Amazing Workplaces. As the name suggests, Authorize, the show, is all about authors and books. In today's session of Authorize, we are going to speak to Woody Hester, author of the book Leadership Maxims, 12 Timeless Leadership Truths. The history of the book, or the seeds as we may rightly call them, date back to 1970 when Woody Hester, who had started his career with the US Army in 1967, returned from a tour of duty in Vietnam. During this time, he was assigned his first staff position at the US Army Air Defense Board. Although, on the one hand, Woody was grateful for getting this much needed break from the rigors of field duty and the stress of living in a combat environment, on the other hand, this would be his first experience of managing the administrative side of project work and leading a diverse group of uniformed staff as well as civilians. Woody knew that these projects came with tight schedules and hard deadlines. Millions of dollars were at stake, and any failure to execute would cost him and those who relied on him greatly. He was scared. He didn't have time to learn, process, and apply complicated leadership theories. He needed practical wisdom that he could use immediately. So, where did Woody get this wisdom from? What helped him in traversing his leadership path? And how did he eventually successfully traverse through this and his entire professional journey? Well, I shall not spill the beans completely. So let's hear the story from Woody Hester himself as he joins us today from Springfield, Illinois, to talk to us about his experience in the US Army, his corporate career, and his much acclaimed book, Leadership Maxims. Welcome, Woody, to Authorize, the show about authors by Amazing Workplaces.
Thank you, Ekta. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm honored.
Woody, I'm super excited for this conversation, and thank you so much for taking out the time to talk to us.
I'm glad to do it and honored.
So, Woody, you spent 5 years in the Army and got your first leadership experience there. Can you share with us your first experience of taking a role of leading people, especially civilians, on the administrative side? And how is leading off field different from leading on field?
My first leadership assignment off field was at the U.S. Army Air Defense Board, as you've mentioned. And for the first time in my professional leadership life, I was responsible for leading uniformed military people and also civilians that were hired by the Department of the U.S. Army to work alongside military people in the development of technology and weapon systems for air defense in the United States. It was my first off-field assignment. I was scared because I didn't really feel that I was as competent as I needed to be to lead people in that kind of work, administrative work, project work with planning and with deadlines, a lot of office work, as well as work in the field at the range, testing weapon systems, and so forth. I didn't have time to read a lot of books about leadership theory. So I turned my attention to timeless leadership truths, which are quotes and phrases and ideas that we run across in our reading that are considered to be generally accepted by everyone, like a desk is a dangerous place from which to view the world. Or in the case of my experience at the Air Defense Board, no matter what you've accomplished, somebody helped you. And that really came into play there because I understood at that point, when I put that on my bulletin board at the U.S. Army Air Defense Board, that if I was going to be successful there, it would be because other people helped me, because members of my team also wanted our projects to be successful, and because they wanted to be successful themselves and wanted me to be successful. So that governed my behavior, my communication with them, and we became a team of people working together toward a common vision. I did not try to do anything by myself. It was very different than leading on field, which is what I did in Vietnam, because I was immersed in the activities that we were engaged in with my men every day, shoulder to shoulder. Whereas at the U.S. Army Air Defense Board, in a non-combat environment, I had a desk and I had an office, and it would have been easy for me to spend too much time there. And as one of the maxims in the book states, a desk is a dangerous place from which to view the world, because you can lose touch with reality. You don't lose touch with reality when you're shoulder to shoulder with your men in a combat zone, but you can when you're not and you're in an office at your desk. So I made sure that I got out of my office, away from my desk, that I mingled with those that I worked with, and that I got to know them well, and that I spent as much time in the areas where the actual work of the organization was taking place as I possibly could.
It's really so true. I mean, this particular concept that you're talking about, that the desk is a dangerous place to be in. And I'm sure, the best of leaders actually go out in the field and work with are shoulder to shoulder with the people, understanding what problems they are going through. And it's only then that they become great leaders. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, that's so important.
Yeah, very true. Very true. So, what is this bulletin board concept that you just spoke about, which you actually, started doing because you felt that you didn't have the knowledge of, certainly the leadership concepts and the principles and the theories and the experience that you required to actually lead the team which you were, given in the U.S. Army. So, in your administrative role, so tell me one thing: how did you start to, applying these leadership principles, and how did these concepts actually help you, take your work forward in the absence of formal learning? How did you go about it? I mean, I'm sure our audience would be interested in knowing that.
Well, Ekta, like many things in life, it was an accident, because I was assigned to an office at the U.S. Army Air Defense Board that had an empty bulletin board on the wall. There was actually a water stain on the bulletin board from an air conditioner leak that had taken place. And so I wanted to cover the stain, and I began putting quotes that I clipped out of trade journals on the bulletin board. But I chose quotes that were important to me. It wasn't completely random. And the very first one that I put up was, no matter what you've accomplished, somebody helped you. And the second one that I put up was, if you can manage relationships, you can manage anything. And actually, those two quotes are the two quotes that guided me through my work at the Air Defense Board with my team there. In spite of my inexperience, just the fact that I clearly understood that I needed those people around me to help me, to want to be successful, to want our team to be successful, and want me to be successful, was really important to our success. And then second, I understood the importance of developing a professionally appropriate personal relationship with each member of my team. So I spent time with them. I got to know them. I understood their family journey. I understood what their interests were outside of work to some extent. I shared some downtime with them besides just work time. And we became acquainted at a level of being able to appreciate each other as human beings and enjoy working together. So that's how it got started. Now, what I did over time is I took that bulletin board with me, not the board, but I took all the quotes off of it and I put them on the next bulletin board in my next office. And I added to them over the years. But I didn't just add any quote or any idea or any phrase, any anecdote. It was just things that really resonated with me, things that I knew were absolutely true and things that I wanted to remember. And because I didn't want to rely on my memory, I kept the bulletin board up in all of my offices. I read and reread it every day so that those quotes became who and what I am as a leader. And every time I'm in a circumstance that one of those quotes or ideas speaks to, it now jumps into my head and I apply it in my work.
Pretty interesting, and the way you actually dealt with it, what you kept on learning and you kept applying, I think that's a pretty interesting way of going about it. And way
Okay.
back in 1970s, when you were, just learning and starting your journey of work, if we actually call it, because you were 24 then, yeah? So that's a
Yeah.
long time
And,
back.
and, I did eventually receive formal education
Yeah.
at the collegiate level, including graduate school. And I do have an understanding now of the theory of leadership. However, I will tell you that fundamentally, I go right back to that bulletin board every day. It's those things that mean the most to me and those things that have been the most effective in my leadership life. Sometimes applying theory does not work for me as well as just applying the very simple facts embodied in these anecdotes that are on my bulletin board. And the bulletin board is still on my wall today. It's right over this computer we're talking on now.
Okay,
So
great.
it hasn't, even though I'm retired from full-time work, it has not left my life.
Awesome. So it shows the kind of impact it had on you. So that's the reason, because of your bulletin board, we are talking to each other today.
Good.
Yeah. So Woody, we have been talking about your bulletin board and your leadership maxims. Your book title refers to it, your book subtitle refers to it, and now I'm getting actually inquisitive to know what these 12 leadership maxims are, on which you based your book, and can you help us understand some of these, considering that you practically use these maxims in your personal and professional journey? Which of these maxims would you describe as the most important and why?
I have to say again that it was really, really difficult for me to limit myself to 12 to write about in my book. There was a great temptation to write about more than that, and someday maybe I will. But the 12 I chose were the 12 that I felt were the most influential in my leadership journey. I've mentioned the first one, which is no matter what you've accomplished, somebody helped you. And the point of that is you're not ever going to accomplish anything by yourself. And in fact, I would add that none of us ever does anything all by ourselves. In the morning when I lean over and tie my shoe, the only reason I can do that is because my dear mother spent a lot of time teaching me how to do it years and years ago. So none of us ever do anything all by ourselves. The second maxim I write about is a desk is a dangerous place from which to view the world. And I think that is so important because some of the worst decisions I've ever made in my leadership journey were decisions I made sitting at my desk in isolation from others, instead of engaging with them around the decision I was about to make. It's easy for leaders to lose touch with reality at the desk. You just have to get out onto the field of play. The third one is kind of an odd one. It's really a metaphor. It says, eat in the cafeteria. Now, there may not even be a cafeteria where you lead, but there's something equivalent. There's some place where there's a mid-shift meal. There's some place where there's an opportunity for you to sit down and spend time with the people in your workplace in an informal setting, getting to know them on a personal basis. That's really, really important. I did that throughout my career, and it made a world of difference for me. The next one is don't accept unacceptable behavior. That's extremely important. I won't dwell on it. Unacceptable behavior in the workplace is a distraction. It's destructive. It limits the organization's ability to achieve its mission, and so it shouldn't take place. And I have a couple of compelling stories about that in my book. Next is the communication one. When you communicate well, you succeed. When you fail to communicate, you fail, period. Then is every problem is an opportunity in disguise. I can't tell you how many times over the course of my leadership journey I've been I've faced significant problems, but they always turned into an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to grow, and an opportunity to get better as an organization. Another is before you can manage others, you need to manage yourselves well. That's an interesting maxim because it describes a story around an individual who was very influential in my leadership journey, who taught me a very simple mechanism for managing myself and my workload and my time extremely well. And it was transformative. And that is my maxim 7. And that's one of the most important maxims of the 12. Number 8 is the next great leader may not be obvious. We all need to look deeply at the people around us. Sometimes there are people with a lot of leadership potential that we assume may not have leadership potential, and so you might miss those. There are also people who are reluctant leaders. They have all the leadership skill, but they don't want to step into a leadership role because of the responsibility. Next is anger is a bad counselor. You should never act out of anger. And that maxim is all about this, and the story in it is all about developing a personal protocol for governing yourself when you become angry in the workplace about anything. Next is every day is a second chance. No matter what happened yesterday or didn't happen yesterday, today is a brand new day. And it's a start over day. And it's a day to get it right and a day to go on and leave the past behind you. Not the lessons you learned, but the troublesome aspects of thinking about whatever it was. And then the last one, the 12th maxim, is another one of the most important. Winners surround themselves with winners. That's really important. Making sure that you have a staff made up of people who truly are standout performers, who can do the work, who are excited about the work and willing to do the work. Because I narrowed this down to 12 from a list of 100, I have to tell you they're all important. They're all critically important. But if I was forced to choose the 5 that were the most important, it would be no matter what you've accomplished, somebody helped you. You need people to help you. A desk is a dangerous place from which to view the world. Get out from behind the desk and out of your office as much as you possibly can. When you communicate well, you succeed. When you don't, you fail. Communication is everything working successfully with people, and it has to go on all the time. one of my favorite phrases is over communicate. You just have to over communicate. Another one is it's not about you. And it's not about you. It's never about you as a leader. It's about the people around you and the work you're doing together. And the last one is the short form I said, which is winners surround themselves with winners. You've got to have a winning team to win, period.
Very interesting, Woody. Can you beat it, in hardly 5-7 minutes? You've actually taught me 12 leadership principles.
Well, good.
So
That's
thank you
good.
so
I
much.
think you I think you know them already, but you know what? We have to be reminded of these things. That's why I read these over every day.
Right. Conscious awareness is very important.
Yep.
We are
It is.
aware of things, but we are not consciously aware of them.
Yes.
Okay, so Woody, now tell me one thing. These concepts which you started, noticing and learning, uh, it was done way back in 1970, and around that period. So, what do you feel? How has leadership and the role of leaders changed over the years? And if you had to redo these principles today, what would you add and subtract to this list?
Um, you know, the world has changed a great deal since 1970, but it's always changing. That's not new. It'll be different 10 years from now than it is today. But what I love about these timeless leadership truths is that they're timeless. And while the world has changed and many, many things in it have changed, people are fundamentally pretty much the same. They respond the same way to each other. They respond the same way to work in the workplace. Fundamentally, I'm talking about. And so these timeless leadership truths are still applicable. One that is not in the book, but is on my bulletin board, that may be the 13th maxim, is make dust or eat dust. And by that, I mean the world has changed in one way significantly, and that is it is a faster world than it's ever been before. Everything moves at the speed of technology. You and I aren't writing a letter to each other across the ocean about this book. Here we are using technology to talk about the book in a 30 or 40-minute time slot using amazing technology that didn't exist in the 1970s. Fundamentally, though, you and I are the same, and we respond to each other. I think the make dust or eat dust maxim is important too. I think what I would say to people in organizations is if the rate of change inside your organization is slower than the rate of change outside of your organization, you could be in trouble. And that's a John Maxwell quote.
Yeah.
And it's very, very true. So that's one thing I would add.
Interesting, Woody. Thank you so much. It's so relevant in today's time. Whoever sees this program is actually going to really learn from this, and I'm sure they will get inquisitive and interested to buy a book and read it, because it's not that you wrote this book at the early stages of your career. You wrote this book in today's times with so much of experience going behind that book, and out of so many principles, so many maxims as you call them, you actually chose 12 out of these and you listed them in your book, which means that these 12 according to you are the most important, and then everything else comes in place, right? So if you can, somebody can actually work on these or master these, I'm sure they can create a great foundation for their own leadership behaviors, right?
I think so. They're fundamental. They're easy. you can quickly incorporate these behaviors into your leadership style and become a better leader. That's what I love about them. It doesn't require a lot of study. Um, so, my only goal for this book is to get it into the hands of as many leaders as possible for that very reason, because I think it will make them better leaders and make them better
Absolutely.
leaders quickly.
So, Woody, tell me one thing. We just spoke about the world of work changing, leadership changing, and the world is right now. We all know it's going through this crisis. So, what is your advice to the leaders of today? I mean, I'm really interested to know what is your piece of advice for people who are today's leaders, actually.
Well, my best advice for leaders today is don't overthink the fundamentals. And these are fundamentals that we're talking about here today. They really haven't changed that much. They're still applicable today, in spite of all of the things that are going on in our experience that we view as being extraordinary, causing hardship, because in history, there have always been those things. There have been world wars. There have been epidemics before. There have been crises of all kinds. It's true that today's world moves very quickly. It's true that the things impacting us today, like COVID, like international affairs, like climate change, all seem like they're unprecedented events. But truthfully, in history, there have been events that are just as influential in the lives of organizations and people working together as we're experiencing today. I would say to the leaders today, make sure you don't overthink the fundamentals, learn them, apply them, surround yourself with really good people. And I talk about how to do that in the 12th maxim in this book. That's critical. You need really good people. You need to expect a lot from them. You need to take really good care of them. You need to help your hiring mistakes, and you will make mistakes when you hire people as a leader. Leave the organization with as much kindness and compassion as you possibly can. You need to avoid your desk as much as you're able and get out onto the field of work, whatever work that is, so that you understand the human condition there and you understand all of the detailed circumstances impacting your team as they work together. You need to over communicate the mission of the organization. You need to describe every day in various ways what it is your organization is doing. What is its reason for existence? You need to describe a vision. A vision is a state that doesn't exist today that you're trying to achieve in the future. Communicate the context within which you're doing the things you're doing. All of the things going on in the world, COVID as an example. You need to communicate about that with your team members so that you engage in dialogue about it. You need to be passionate and demonstrate that in your behavior about your mission and your vision. And you need to demonstrate in various ways every day your appreciation for the human condition. In other words, you need to be empathetic. You need to communicate to those around you that you are aware of the hardships that they're going through. Still, you expect a lot of them, but you need to communicate with them the fact that you care about them, the fact that you trust them, the fact that you rely on them. They want to be in the know. They want to do good work. They want to be appreciated. They want to be taken care of. And they want to be proud of what you all accomplished together. That's the only advice I have for leaders. It's simple. It's pretty fundamental stuff. It's not a lot of theory.
Yeah.
And what we're talking about here just takes a few minutes to talk about. It's not a book that weighs 4 pounds. So that's my advice.
Thank you, Woody. Thank you for sharing such a wonderful piece of advice for the leaders of today. And that brings us to your book again. So I would like to, ask you to show your book to the audience. Yeah.
Sure. Here it is.
Okay.
Is it?
And I believe it's a 70-page thin book, so anybody can read it, in a jiffy. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Awesome.
It's not very thick. I want to
Yes.
show everybody it's not very thick. It's 70 pages. It's 12 chapters, and they're short. My writing style on purpose is executive summary format. So that means that every line, every paragraph has important information in it. I don't want to waste anyone's time. This book can easily be read quickly, and the 12 ideas can be learned and incorporated into a person's leadership style, making them a better leader soon.
Definitely. So I'll request all the audience who are watching us, on Authorize, you can buy this book. It's available on Amazon. And you can also read about the book on the book's personal website, which is www.timelessleadershiptruths.com. And we'll be providing the link to this book in the video description below, so you can check that out as well. Okay, Woody, so, thank you so much for being a part of this discussion. I think it was a very enlightening discussion for all of us, and people, who are going to watch this show. I'm sure they're going to learn a lot from this conversation of ours. Thank you so much once again for being a part of Authorize. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ekta.